Welcome back to Lars, Larson Show. I've told you that I'm a supporter of President Donald Trump, just so that you know that I have a dog in the fight, and I hope he doesn't take that the wrong way. I've also told you that I thought it was not necessarily a bad thing to meet with Vladimir Putin, but you shouldn't expect too much out of the meeting. I thought I'd get Frank Gaffney's perspective on all this, because there is at least a promise from the White House that sometime this fall, Vladimir Putin himself may be coming to the United States of America, and there may be a second meeting as well. Frank Gaffney is the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure, Lars, as always.
Let me take your temperature on all this. Do you think the president should have met with Vladimir Putin to begin with?
Look, I'm not going to, beat around the bush. I don't think it was probably advisable, but the fact that he did it seemed to me to be something you could argue should be done, just to have a kind of more normal interaction between these heads of state. But the thing that is more troubling to me is what was done, some of which we can only infer. And I've argued that if he's going to do this again, for heaven's sakes, we really ought to have a do-over on some of the pieces that came out, I think, rather badly in this first go-around. And I'm not, frankly, as much concerned about the toing and froing that has been the almost exclusive preoccupation of official Washington ever since that meeting, namely, that whether the president dissed the intelligence community or not. What I'm concerned about is the substantive agenda that Vladimir Putin claims the president and he agreed to pursue, which was, Lars, pretty much the old Soviet playbook from the Cold War. And that is more worrying to me than just the fact of a meeting.
I guess I'm just thinking, I know it's kind of a bumper sticker approach, but, keep your enemies close, your friends close and your enemies closer. That if Vladimir Putin, and we don't know what happened in that meeting, and in fact, I don't think it's appropriate for the Democrats to ask for the transcript of that meeting or the translator to come and testify. But, I think the left assumes, well, Donald Trump's a patsy, so he probably walked into the meeting privately with Putin and gave away the store. I don't agree. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think it's the case that the president gave away the store necessarily with North Korea. He played hard with Kim, and in fact, today we're hearing that they're dismantling one of their engine test sites in North Korea, which at least seems to be a move in the right direction, rather than the wrong direction. It's not no movement. It's actually something of substance. Now, is it everything we'd like to get out of North Korea? Of course not. But hey, journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right?
Yeah, look, my principal concern is that the kinds of things that the president was being asked to agree to, Lars, were things that are really, by and large, at odds with his own policies. Let me just give you an example. The president unveiled a couple of weeks ago with considerable fanfare what I think could be one of his most important legacies, assuming he pursues it, and that is creating a U.S. Space Force.
Right.
Now, Vladimir Putin says that one of the things they agreed to pursue was prohibiting weapons in space. That's right out of, as I say, what the Kremlin was always trying to get us to do, prevent us from having any weapons that could be used to protect our interests in space, which are enormous, as you know, for commercial as well as national security purposes, while they would go ahead and acquire all the weapons from space that they want, because that's the way they always do arms control. So whether it's that or whether it's the other arms control deals, the INF Treaty, as they call it, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Force Treaty, the New START Treaty, whether it's limitations on our missile defenses, these are things that the president, I believe, doesn't and shouldn't want any part of. And yet Putin claimed that he had agreed to it. We need to get that sorted out, and I hope this, if there is another meeting, the starting point is, Vladimir Obin, we're actually not going to do that stuff because it's not consistent with our national interests, and we're going to hold you accountable for the violations of arms control treaties and other things that you have been doing. that are also not consistent with our national interests.
See, and that sounds sensible to me as well. I mean, and I'm hoping that that our assumption that perhaps the president has agreed to talk about things, prohibiting things that he's actually said he's planning to do. I'm hoping, again, like everything else that Trump seems to do, that it's a negotiating tactic. Sure, we can talk about that and then explain to him, and this is why we're going to be pursuing this. Now, if you want to put, I guess if the two countries want to put some limitations on it, then that's up to both parties. But is it? Do you think Trump just goofed on this one, or do you think that Trump was actually just trying to set the stage for further talks, not intending to give away anything at all?
I don't know, Lars, and honestly, I'm not even sure that people who work directly for him know as much as we would like them to, based on the way this meeting went down, a 2-hour private session with Putin alone with just their translators. And of course, when you're doing simultaneous translation, it's tough to do much in the way of note keeping. But here's the thing: whether it was right or whether it was wrong, we are where we are, and what needs to be done, I think, is to clarify. We're not going to go where you want us to go, Vladimir. And the main thing is, I've just spent so much of my life, most of the past 40 years, Lars, on these various arms control issues. And I can tell you, it's not a good idea to get involved in a process, as they call them, when you don't have an end game that is actually consistent with your national security requirements. The process inevitably becomes something that takes on a life of its own. And let me just say, I was in the State Department all day today, and there are lots of people in that building who would be quite happy to pursue all of the things that Vladimir Putin was talking about. Their agenda is oftentimes very similar to what the Russians' agenda has been. And by the way, so is that true of the Democrats. The Democrats are caviling about the president, selling out to the Russians and so on. I don't think there's anything on that Russian agenda that Putin laid out at the beginning of the press conference after his Helsinki meeting with the president that they don't agree with wholeheartedly.
Exactly,
so,
which
please.
Makes them a little two-faced. Hey, before we run out of time, Keith Ellison, member of Congress, Minnesota Democrat, who's now trying to block the publication of a book because it says things about him that are not fun for Ellison, but true, anti-American, Marxist, Sharia supremacist groups that he's tied into, and now he's demanding that Amazon censor these books and actually destroy them?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a longer story. I think what is motivating him is that there is a new book coming out by Trevor Loudon, who's, as you know, I'm sure, a wonderful chronicler of these relationships by many in Congress, Democrats primarily, who are tied to communists, social democrats, Islamists. In this case, I think it's fair to say that Keith Ellison is all of the above. But what Ellison did in response, I think, to the evidence that this book is coming out, and he's not going to be happy about that, especially as he runs for Attorney General of Minnesota, is he said to Amazon, you need to stop printing anything, digitally or in print, that has anybody involved with groups that are haters, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
I don't trust those
He's
people
also talking about
for anything.
Book burning. It's outrageous.
It is outrageous. I mean, and the idea that a man in politics would want to start shutting down free speech that's critical of him, I would prefer that if he had any real guts, he'd just simply come out and say that it isn't true and I can prove it. Good. Go right ahead and do it. But I don't trust Keith Ellison. I don't trust the Southern Poverty Law Center. I hope we can at least trust Bezos. I don't like Bezos' politics. But if he's an honest merchant, then he says, hey, we write books, we have books written, we publish them, and we sell them. And if people want to buy them, they can. And if you want to burn books, go find a country that likes that. Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. Frank, thanks very much.